No ideas but in the facts. The natural object is always the adequate symbol. Things are symbols of themselves. Pay attention to minute particulars. Take care of the little ones. Close to the nose, William Carlos Williams. Only objectified emotion endures, Louis Zukowski. Only objectified emotion endures. So if you have a big freak out and say, I saw the light, I saw the light, and I saw the light, rather than, I saw the tin flash of sun dazzle on the waters, or the church's towers crooked mirrored on the glassy surface of the Venetian canals. The church's towers crooked mirrored on the glassy surface of the canal, or tin flash of sun dazzle. The tin flash of sun dazzle is Ezra Pound's description of the flash of light on water in the Mediterranean. Tin flash of sun dazzle. So whatever charge he got out of that, he was able to objectify in the sense of making a little object out of it, of words. Crooked mirrored on the glassy surface was my own attempt at an imitation of the description of a light on water in Venice, which I presented to Pound as a sample of following his method of direct treatment of the object, quote unquote, a direct treatment of the thing, or to paraphrase Pound, direct treatment of the object. So all these are basic grounding that I was talking about. In terms of where you begin, if you don't know how to write, at least you begin with real things, or with something that is objective. Objective in the sense of something you can see, smell, taste, touch, hear, or think. Think is another, the thought is another sense of the six senses: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thought, because there is the mind. So if you quote your own thoughts, those are objects also. If you get lost in your thoughts, well, then you're just lost in your thoughts in that sort of watery, imprecise abstraction. But if you quote your own thought, that's all right. Like yesterday I was walking down the street, and as the sun glinted off the car, I thought, tin flash of sun dazzle. So you can quote your thought. If you stand outside of your thought and quote it, it becomes another object. So you don't have to worry about whether or not you can include your subjective thoughts. You sure can, as long as you treat them as objects. So all this is pretty abstract, but I'm presenting basic slogans useful to beginners, middle practitioners, and advanced practitioners of poetry. All need and begin with a basic grounding in some sense of reality, and it's not very far from journalism, actually, of who, what, where, when, why, or whatever sequence of facts that a journalist will have to do for reporting, because he's not really allowed to editorialize theoretically, but he is allowed to present the details that lead to a conclusion, rather than just refer to them and give the conclusion. And so Pound also has the term reference and presentation. How many have heard of that in Pound? Reference versus presentation. Like in conversation with Pound in 1967 in Venice, he said, the cantos are a mess. And I said, what's the matter? He said, too much reference, not enough presentation. And reference means it's a lovely day. Presentation is the no cloud in the sky, sun over green flat irons, heat shimmering from the sidewalk, or whatever. So as you present the facts of the situation rather than a generalization. So the poetic exercise we were doing was grounded on the idea of waking up where you are in space. To recapitulate where we left off, waking up where you are in space, noticing it, noticing the place, place name or the idea or the conception or the map or the street or the name of the building or the fact that you're a human being or the fact that you're panting tired or you just had lunch, and then having given name and form to the immensity of the space and name and form to the spot where you are in the space, you then have your emotional reaction, so to speak, or your comment or your afterthought. In a way, it's like that famous Basho haiku, an old pond, sound of a frog jumping, and then the after comment or ripple after ripple of thought, splash. Kerouac has a lot of good haikus. Someone brought me a copy of Scattered Poems to suggest that I read some, and that's a great idea. He said some Western haikus, and they're based on flash moment perceptions. So what I was saying when I was talking about 3 stages of space, recognition, and comment, I was trying to analyze what is a thought. Actually, bring it down to that. What is actually a thought? What does a thought consist in? If you were trying to define the structure of a thought, what is it? Or the best is, how can a thought be remembered? Or how is a thought remembered? Or in what form does a thought arrive in the mind? So I was thinking, I was describing picture and I was describing word, but also I was trying to give a skeleton of the thought. So I'm suggesting this is the skeleton of a thought form. Flash recognition and after comment. Or it's flash recognition and then you suddenly realize you had the thought. Or you have a thought and then you realize you had the thought. You have a thought, recognize it, and then you realize you just had it. And then all of a sudden you have another thought. Then you recognize it, and you realize you had that. And that actually is probably the way the mind works. And it probably could happen, I think the fastest synaptic reaction is, the synaptic reaction is 152 times a second. Does anybody know? It's as swift as the synapses give messages across the nerve patterns, nerve junctures. So you can probably have 52 thoughts a second. And broken up into that form. So Kerouac's haikus are just little things that he noticed. Things that he just noticed he noticed. Things that he noticed, and then he noticed them and wrote them down. So it wasn't that he invented anything, it's just that he noticed something, and then he noticed it, and then he wrote it down. So it's the same thing. You notice, and then your comment is writing it down. Arms folded to the moon among the cows. Birds singing in the dark. Rainy dawn. Elephants munching on grass. Loving heads side by side. I guess what the funny thing of that is just seeing the big heads, big loving heads side by side munching on the grass.